Hello everyone, the following is my short, spoiler-free review of Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now this clip is taken from a longer 2-hour video because I did a full 2-hour deep dive into Spider-Man Brand New Day and Tom Holland's time as the Spider-Man character, and I went through everything from beginning to end in a spoiler-free slash spoiler-filled review of full thoughts of Spider-Man Brand New Day, featuring all of Tom Holland's time as Spider-Man as well. So if you want a deep dive into the study of this character, this portrayal of the character, and a full deep dive review of Spider-Man Brand New Day, go on my channel and click on the other video, the 2-hour video. The following clip is from that full video. This is the spoiler-free section of that video. If you want a spoiler-free review, here it is. Thank you very much for watching.
Jayvardy.
Jayvardy.
This Jayvardy.
Jayvardy. Thank you, Jayvardy.
Jayvardy.
Jayvardy. Oh, Jayvardy. Oh my gosh.
And with that, I have seen Spider-Man Brand New Day. I just got home within the last half hour, and I am finishing what I started last night. This is going to be the spoiler-free part of the review. As long as you see the word spoiler-free area at the bottom of this video, you are fine. You do not need to worry about spoilers here. I will not spoil the movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. So if you want the spoiler-free part of the review, this part's for you. When you see the words beware spoilers at the bottom of this video, that's when I will be using spoilers to help discuss my review. Now, even in the spoiler area, I'm not going to go through the movie beat by beat. It's not going to be that type of review, but I will reference parts of the movie and sections of the movie to help with the points that I'm making. But this part is the spoiler-free area. So let's get to the spoiler-free part of the review. Was this movie good? That's the very first question. Was this movie good? Yes. Yes, it was. It was a good movie. If that's all you need to hear, then you're done. You're good to go. But there's two truths that I feel is accurate with this movie. There's this movie on its own in a bubble. You take this movie and you place it in a bubble where it exists on its own, and then there's this movie where it exists with the rest of the Spider-Man movies that Tom Holland has started as part of like a 4-movie story, if you will. This movie for me is better in the bubble. So this movie existing in a bubble on its own as its own singular individual experience, that's where this movie is its best. A lot of its weaknesses, in my opinion, come from when it exists as a part 4 of a 4-movie story. To me, that's where all the weaknesses of the movie start to come in. This movie is not a perfect movie. There are going to be a ton of people that overhype this movie because it is really good. And this is a must-see in the theater. This is not the type of movie that you wait for at home because this movie is going to be so much better on the big screen and it's going to be so much better part of an audience. So as part of an audience. So if you can go see this and experience it with an audience on the big screen in the first probably 2 weeks of its release, that's the time to see it. I do feel the movie will lose steam eventually. I do think that over the course of the next 2 weeks, you're going to see a lot of people overrate this movie because on its own, it is a really good experience and it's a good theatrical experience. So everyone who goes out to see it in the next couple weeks is probably going to overrate it slightly, but it is a great theater experience. This was the first movie where I think it's called, I don't know what it's called, but it's where it uses the side walls as a second and third screen. I'm so out of the loop because I don't go to the movies very often anymore, but whatever that's called when they use the side walls as extra parts of the screen, this movie incorporates that, and not every single scene does that. There are most of the movie, I would say, where they're only using a single screen at the front. But there are a lot of action sequences and even dramatic sequences where they use all three walls as this kind of large 360 almost like experience of the scene. Which I thought at first was distracting because I haven't seen a movie like that before. Um, Back when I went to the movies, we had 3D goggles instead of this, 360 wall experience. But I thought it was a bit distracting at first, but I got used to it pretty quick, and by the end of the movie, I no longer found it distracting. But the point is, this is a really good theater experience movie. I feel like people that wait to see this at home are not going to appreciate it as much. And that's how I feel for myself. I feel I enjoyed this movie a lot more than I probably would have had I waited for this movie to come out, which is what I do with 99% of movies nowadays. I feel that seeing a movie in the theater with an audience kind of ups your experience, right? And it kind of makes you appreciate the movie more than you would watching it alone at home. Um, that said, that can also paint a picture of the movie that's not entirely accurate because part of the high review was the experiences, which is what I'm getting back to saying that I feel like some people are going to overrate this movie in the next couple weeks. But it was a great theater experience, and this movie existing in a bubble is really good. I feel like Tom Holland probably put on the best performance he's ever given as Peter Parker's Spider-Man in this movie. I feel that he has progressively gotten better in each movie that he's done. I thought he personally was better in Far From Home than he was in Homecoming. I thought he was much, much better in No Way Home than he was in Far From Home. And this movie, I feel, was his singular best performance as the character, um, as an actor, not necessarily how the character was written or anything like that. That didn't hurt. But I feel that as an actor, his portrayal of the character was the best in this movie. And I feel that one thing this movie accomplishes more than anything, I thought No Way Home was very close to accomplishing this by the end of it, but Tom Holland has finally definitively become Spider-Man. It only took him 7 movies to do it, or 4 singular movies to do it, but he has finally done it. He's finally become the definitive Spider-Man. And I don't mean like better than Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. But he has definitively become Spider-Man. He has shed that Iron Boy Jr. label. He's shed the Spider Boy label. He's shed this, you know, he's a version of Spider-Man. He has finally definitively become Spider-Man. I feel that if nothing else, that what this movie accomplished was Tom Holland has finally grown into being Spider-Man. And you'll know exactly what I mean once you see this movie. But any sort of, you know, feeling of him being more of an Iron Boy than Spider-Man or being, this specific type of Spider-Man, all that stuff feels gone by the end of this movie. It just feels like he's finally definitively become the true Spider-Man. And again, that has nothing to do with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. It's just he finally feels like he's embodied the character. That has nothing to do with any other portrayals of the character. It just feels like he's finally embodied the true spirit of this character. And that's what I mean by, if nothing else, this movie feels like Tom Holland has finally become just Spider-Man. And that's that's a great thing about this movie. And going forward, I have no hesitations about, watching Tom Holland play Spider-Man. Now, that said, there were creative things that I would have done differently, and I'll get into that more in the spoiler section of this review. But there were definitely things I would have done differently creatively. Um, Also, I talked a lot about earlier in my thoughts heading into the movie about character development and the sort of lack of character development of Tom Holland as the character. And while I feel like he's definitively stepped into embodying this character of Peter Parker Spider-Man at this point, I do still feel that there hasn't been a ton of character development in the actual character itself. It it feels more like he's just grown in front of our eyes. It feels like we've watched a boy go from being a boy to a man, but in terms of his character, there is no deep study character of this version of Peter Parker. There's nothing really to study because he hasn't really changed all that much as a person from the first time we met him until now. He's just gotten older. And that's how I would describe the character development of this version of Peter Parker is that it's just that he's gotten older and he's gotten wiser and he's discovered himself, and that's that feeling of he's gone from being a boy to a man. But it doesn't, in terms of who he is as a person and the decision making that he makes, how he handles situations he finds himself in, there is no real difference between this version, between the Peter Parker in Brand New Day and the Peter Parker in Civil War or in Homecoming. He's just older. That's it. He's older and he's experienced a bunch of events, but he hasn't really changed as a person. If you look at this character, it's not that type of character where where he's gone through things that has shaped him and molded him and changed him as a person. He's not really designed that way, and that's the faults of earlier movies as opposed to this movie. Because I feel that the earlier movies, like Spider-Man: Homecoming, is the most guilty of this, did not do the things it needed to do necessary to show actual progression of a character because he's always kind of known the right thing. He's always kind of known what the right thing to do is, and he's always kind of known what the right way to act is. And again, this is the faults of the earlier movies because the earlier movies were designed that we cannot absolutely not make this character unlikable in any way. From the very moment we've been introduced to Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Marvel Studios has been extremely careful to make sure that we do not dislike this character, that we do not find faults in this character, and that there's nothing we can criticize about this character, both in terms of how they show him, as Spider-Man, but there's nothing that we can be like, hey, I dislike this guy, because if I dislike this guy, then I can't cheer for this Spider-Man. So they've been super careful to make sure that we do not dislike this guy, that we have to like him from the very second we meet him. But because he was designed that way, he already knew all of the lessons he needed to learn to become the man that he is in this movie in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Again, he just feels older and wiser. That's it. But he hasn't really changed. The decisions he makes in this movie are still the same same types of decisions he would have made in the earlier movies. It's just that he's, older and wiser. And that a lot of that comes off of just Tom Holland himself being older and have grown as an actor. I think a lot of that is just in Tom's portrayal of the character, not in the writing of the character of itself, because in the writing of the character itself, I don't feel there's a ton of progression here. I don't feel that there's a lot of, changes here. And I'll go back to the Lethal Weapon analysis that I brought up last night. You take Lethal Weapon 1 and you take Lethal Weapon 4. Compare Sergeant Riggs in Lethal Weapon 1, that's Mel Gibson's character, and Sergeant Riggs in Lethal Weapon 4. They're completely different men. Completely different men. But over the course of those four movies, we've seen this natural progression that takes him from point A to point B. So by the fourth movie, yes, he is a completely different man, but it was natural. There was a natural progression over four movies in terms of how the events that he experienced shaped him, how, the relationships around him shaped him, how, growing within his profession and the bonds he was making with the people around him changed him as a man. But you go and you watch those two movies, they're two completely different characters. Characteristics remain throughout all four movies, but the man that those characteristics belong to is completely different. And that's not portrayal in those movies. That's the writing of the character. There's a natural progression over those four movies that just simply doesn't exist from Spider-Man Homecoming to Spider-Man Brand New Day. But this version of Spider-Man has always known the right thing. He hasn't really changed. He's just gotten older. I can't really beat that in more without going into spoilers, but all of the progression of the character, sort of say, is more in Tom Holland's portrayal, and that's a compliment to him as an actor because he has grown as a man and he's brought that growth into his portrayal of the character. But the writing of the character, I brought up last night how I was worried that they still weren't going to show a ton of character progression, and they really haven't. That's the one flaw of this movie, in my opinion, because this movie has the core Spider-Man message in it. And what's the core Spider-Man message? It's with great power comes great responsibility. But what does that term mean? With great power comes great responsibility. That term is not said in the movie, by the way, in that Brand New Day, I mean. But what does that term mean? It basically means be a good person when no one else would be a good person, and even when it's hard for you to be a good person, be a good person anyways. That's what with great power comes great responsibility means. And that message is in this movie. That is the core message of this movie. Be a good person even when other people wouldn't be a good person, and even when it's hard for you to be a good person, be a good person anyways. That is the core message of this movie. And in saying that, this movie thematically does not offer anything new that we haven't seen in other Spider Man movies, or in other Spider Man stories in general, whether it's the video games or the comic books or any of the cartoons. That message, that core thematic message of what almost every Spider-Man story tries to be, it is in here, but in saying that, it fails to really give us something new in that sense. So those are the weaknesses of the movie, and I'll get into more of that when I get to spoilers. The last thing I want to say in the spoiler-free part of this video is the action and the sequences with Spider-Man in the suit, by far and away the best actual Spider-Man sequences that we've seen in a long time in a Spider-Man movie, in a long, long time. That was a lot of what was going around before this movie came out, was how they were really focused on trying to improve the action sequences, improve the cinematography when Spider-Man was in the suit, improve what Spider-Man's doing on screen and how the camera is recording him doing those things, and the movement of the camera itself in conjunction with the movement of Spider-Man, and how they really wanted to up the game in terms of these action sequences when Spider-Man was in suit, and I definitely feel they accomplished that. This may have the best Spider-Man action in a live action Spider-Man movie. Um, it probably does. And in that sense, I know that was a big focus for them, and I do think they accomplished that. All in all, all in all, I would say this movie is more good than bad, but it was not perfect, and I will get into more details in the spoiler part of this review, which I'm going to go into now. But if I had to give it a score, I don't like to do scores the day of seeing a movie because I need to think about it. for a bit. I like to sit with it for a bit and think about it for a few weeks at least. I'm probably not gonna go see this movie in the theaters again, but I am saying right now I'm not committing to definitely not going again. I I have an open mind to possibly going to see this movie again. I haven't done that in several years, gone to see a movie twice during its theatrical run. I don't remember the last movie I did that for, but it's been a long time. I didn't do it for No Way Home, but that's a lot of that has to do with COVID. And at the time, I had to see No Way Home in a drive-in. I did get to see No Way Home in a theater again during the Spider Mania re-releases, but I digress. I haven't gone to seen a movie twice in its initial theatrical run in several years. I don't know if I'm going to go see this one again or not, but I'm not committing to not. But in terms of giving it a rating, I do feel like I need to think about it for a bit. I know this is so unprofessional for reviews. Like reviews really kind of have to come up with a score fast, but for me, I'm not that type of moviegoer. I really do like to think about it for a while, and I probably do want to see it a second time before I rank it. But I will say this. I went into this movie having a definitive top four for Spider-Man movies out of the 10 Spider-Man movies that have come out, where I felt that the four at the top were the definitive four, and then the six below them were all noticeably below them. I don't think I like this movie enough to put it into that top four to knock any of them out. My initial reaction now, which I reserve the right to change in the future, is to put it at fifth. To say it's better than the other six, but not as good as the top four. And I will reveal that list of 11 at the end of this video. And I'm thinking I'm going to put this at number five. I'm thinking number five. So that's the last thing I'm going to say in the spoiler-free section of this video. Overall, I think it's a movie worth going to see. Overall, I think it's a really good theater experience. Overall, I think Tom Holland has definitively become Spider-Man. And overall, I think this movie is more good than bad, but it's not perfect, and people are going to overrate it a bit. But to me, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to see it. And the spoiler section of this video is starting now. I'll give a countdown. After that, we are in spoiler territory. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch the movie. And if you're still interested, you can come back for the spoiler discussion afterwards. So spoilers start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.